Hello, everybody. It is January 6th. I thought I would do journal entries. I've got, oh my goodness, I think you can see that. Oh, you can't. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 pages. So this isn't 2 hours long. I think I might break it up into two sections and kind of push the session that goes with that. So for these 2 weeks, things might be a little mixed up, but they'll be in chronological order, so it makes sense. So anyhow, let me share screen and get started. As you can see, look at all of them. Because my session is January 7th, and I think I lost the session in the middle of this. So, well, I'll just get started. And I thought, I don't know if you guys need to like see this actual written here and or if you'd rather just see me reading it. So I'll try it like this and see how that goes. So it's the 1st and 2nd of June, 2024. Chris and I were going to have sex in the shower today, and as usual, he had me sitting there waiting. I washed my hair, washed my body, shaved my legs, and yeah, I was still sitting there for 10 minutes. I was starting to get angry. I decided, screw it, and got out and dried off. Just as I did, he came in and said, "Are you done?" I said, "No, I'm not done, but I was getting angry. I've told you repeatedly I don't like sitting here waiting for you." He said that he decided to shave, and I said, "Well, couldn't you do that later or some other time? Why do I have to be sitting here waiting?" What I wanted to say but didn't was, what am I, some sort of blow-up doll that just waits around for you to be ready? I thought that was interesting. Then I went out and beat up Ted for a while. So I get real anxious sitting there waiting anyway, I was thinking about that while I was beating up Ted. I'm not a blow up doll just sitting around waiting for you. I'm a human being and I should be respected. If you want to have sex with me, be considerate of me as well. I'm not sure who I was talking to. Chris, yes, but I think someone else too. Those military men. After that, I spent 6 hours working on my parts map, 15 more parts. Unbelievable. These are easy ones, though. Pets and family members, and all I have are their names, but they're on the map. Then I watched some of the 50 Voices interviews. I watched them, four of them, and I had some split-second memories of a few things that I jotted down. I came to the understanding of what they were training me to become. Not necessarily a spy, but I would be sent in as a seducer of men, businessmen and such, and I would gain their trust enough to get secrets out of them, or ordered to kill them, or both. I also remembered that my training slash torture that Dad did with the electrocution and the pins was splitting me off again and again and again, so that if I was ever caught and interrogated, then I would be able to mislead interrogators on a deep subconscious level. Stretch has two below her. One is Armstrong and one is Gumby. My father was not very creative with names. After that, I watched a show called The Veil. It's about a female spy. It occurred to me while I was watching that it must be because of my high IQ that they could split me so much. I was thinking that spies probably have many, many, many parts as well. So again, I'm trying to go to sleep and an army cadence song is going through my head. I want to be an airborne ranger. I want to live the life of danger. That is exactly what Chris did. More and more, I realized part of why I fell in love with him because I knew he could protect me. Consciously, I had no idea the implications of what a ranger was, or special forces, or any of that. It took me years to really grasp it. But one of my parts did and grabbed onto him. I also remembered that in Germany in the army, I won Soldier of the Month for 1 month. But leading up to that, I had gone on several dates with a sergeant. That really took me aback because I didn't know what he saw in me. I didn't know him either or how he knew me. I was just flattered. He used to always have this thing that he would say to taxi drivers when we got in, or various other people, and I can't remember what it was. It was something like, "Howdy, how y'all doing?" But he was not a cowboy or a country person at all. I always thought it was odd. I realized now it was a code to the driver. I began to realize that I didn't remember any of those dates. When that occurred to me, I realized there is a reason. Then I remembered he had taken me somewhere to some rituals with some military commanders. It was the same military commanders that questioned me during the Soldier of the Month award that I won, and that I probably won because I had had sex with them, and that sergeant led me into it. I remember prior to that, my first sergeant, whose nickname is Top, he's like the head enlisted guy in the military. Top used to call me into his office and have talks with me. They would be anywhere from half an hour to an hour and a half. I asked myself what happened in there. I got the answer. He would have me give him blowjobs or he would rape me. And I shouldn't even say have me give him blowjobs. It's basically raping me anally or otherwise, or not anally, orally or otherwise. Afterwards, he would give me a towel to wipe off and tell me to get dressed. He called me Avery's. He knew what my last name was, Avers, but he kept calling me that. As a matter of fact, I remember the first time him asking me about my last name and if I knew what that meant. I was confused and told them that it didn't mean anything. He knew something that I did not. Again, it was my last name. Also, during that interview for Soldier of the Month, there were, I think, 6 different commanders questioning me. I was sitting on a hardwood chair in front of the long table with these 6 officers on the other side. Each one took a turn questioning me. There were others to be interviewed, but it was just me in that room with them. I remember part of my training to win that was they told me to sit comfortably and relaxed, but when I talked to them, to not turn my head in a natural way. Keep my body straight forward and just turn my neck and look at each one directly. So you're not, someone asks you a question, you go like this. You just sit, like standing at attention, but you're sitting and turn your head. And there's 6 officers at a table, probably 10 feet long. And this one would ask you a question, and then that one would, and then this one, that one. And so you're just like this back and forth answering these questions. I realized that's just like a doll would move. And now I'm realizing that perhaps it was those military commanders that I was yelling at, that I was not a doll. When Chris and I were in the shower, I'm not a doll sitting here waiting for you. And that's how they had me behave during their rituals. That's where Anne came into play. She was required to just lie there like a rag doll and wait for whoever wanted to come and rape me. I had to just lie there and wait. Thus the anxiety when I'm waiting for my husband. There were about 6 of us lower ranked soldiers in there, 4 guys, laid out on twin beds, all dressed up like Raggedy Ann dolls, the outfit and the wig of red hair. They even put a circle of blush on our cheeks to look like the doll. There were no pillows on these beds, and we were required to lie there with our heads propped up against the wall, body flat. You laying there like that, like a doll would. My jaw and the back of my skull above my neck are having pain right now. Strange fetish. And then they had me act like a doll during the interview, all completely organized and coordinated. So disgusting. I recall they were smirking during it. One time I remember they had me, I forgot. One time I remember they had me, well, let me back up a bit. This boyfriend, this sergeant who approached me, flattered me, asked me out, I went out with him. We get in the taxi and he'd say, that phrase, howdy, how y'all, how the hell you doing? And that was code for the taxi driver to kind of drive around in circles, but ultimately he brought us back to the officers club, which they call, and well, I'll get to that in a second, but so we would go in, I would go in, and he would not, and that's where these officers were with these beds laid out with me and, 5 or 6 other people like me, enlisted people, and we'd get dressed up into these doll costumes and wigs and put the makeup on our cheeks and lie there and wait for them. And they called it the circus, and they would go around and rape us and have a party and all that stuff. But there were also something else that went on here. So one time I remember they had me slice the throat of someone. I don't know who it was, a German man. I was in front of him. I had been so skilled at cutting by then that I knew that the blood was going to squirt all over me, and I did not want it to. So I grabbed the hair above the forehead and I pushed the head down, then cut so that it would seal the squirt. After I cut the throat, I pushed the body to the side. All I had to do was wash my hands. We were in the center of a pentagram with them surrounding us, the officers. I got their approval for that, eyebrows raised. Then we drank the blood and ate the parts of him with great gusto. So I'm thinking that because Top, now he wasn't in this circus, he was in my barracks room, or not room, but the barracks, and would call me into his office and shut the door. So I'm thinking that because Top knew my last name, probably did some research, called me in his office at just the right time, closed the door, and would have private talks with me. And because he could activate Kitten, who's my sex slave, then he sent the sergeant to me to take me on dates, who took me to parties with the higher up military men that had rituals and raped me as well, gang raped. When all this occurred, or rather fell into place, I cried. I guess there's more work on Ted. Strange thing though, just before I remembered the military stuff, I noticed something in my belly button. Forgot about this too. I tried to pull it out with my nail, but I could not, so I got a pair of tweezers and had a very difficult time. But I pulled what looks like a seed out of my belly button. I put it under the light and looked at it closely, and I squished it. It's no seed that I have ever seen, and I have the strangest impression that it came from inside of my body out. I kept saying to myself, it's probably from the work I did a couple of days ago in the garden and it just worked its way in. But there's nothing like that in my backyard at all. I spent a few weeks looking for seeds like that, couldn't find them. I saved it to look at it more closely tomorrow. Hopefully I can get some good pictures of it, but it's quite tiny. I keep thinking it was an eject. I keep thinking it was ejected from my body. So strange. And right now, as I'm reading this to you, I'm thinking that it was an implant. Although when I squished it, it squished like organic matter. It wasn't mechanical in any way, but who knows? So Avers has to be a trigger word. It was used then and a few years later by that Balistreri boy and his mother. Now, this is the Balistreri mob crime family that runs Milwaukee, Wisconsin, or they did in the 70s. I went on about 5 dates with that sergeant, so that would be 5 different ritual/rapes. It's just endless. So that was at night, and here's the next morning. So I got up today and I was pretty happy about the fact that I didn't want any cigarettes. I smelled the smoke from Chris's cigarettes and it made me think of it, but I didn't have a physical urge. So I felt good about that. I did a bunch of gardening and plant care, came in and was sitting watching TV with Chris, had some toast. I went out and beat up Ted. Now, I want to interject here. You'll hear me talking about watching TV or with Chris. I don't watch TV per se. If it's just me and I need a break from all this, I'll go watch some YouTube, something educational, my homesteaders or my, gardening people or an Emma interview or Nathan Reynolds interview or something. But when I sit in the living room with Chris, he likes to watch the news in the morning. So I have the seating set up so that I sit on the same wall that the TV's on. So I don't really watch it, but I'm hearing it. And I might glance over from time to time because I know I've gone on and on about not watching TV. So that's what I'm referring to. So Anne was really going to town beating up the commanders from the military that raped me. Now, Anne is the part that I guess I should share. I'll show you when I first saw her. Hopefully I can find her quickly. Journal, parts, maps. I'll show you on my PowerPoint here because I can find it quicker. And 69 references. No, I need to go to Honor because he is right either before. Yeah, here she is. Now, this is Anne, her bio page. She's the Raggedy Ann doll. This was when I first met her. I didn't put a date on this page. But it was way before I made this bio page. But I had a dream, and in the dream, I saw a Raggedy Ann doll just dead, leaning over onto a Raggedy Andy doll. Now, he was stiff and staring, and his eyes were just really big and huge and blue and almost glowing. And she had a dead body and face, and we were sitting I guess, a bus stop near. And I don't know if this wasn't in real life, obviously, but the symbolism in my dream was that we were at a stoplight and there was no direction. No, none of the lights were lit up, and there was also a stop sign. So it's like these two parts were popping their head up saying, "Stop, no, don't go any further." And this is when I first met Anne. She changed her name in her picture. She wants to love the little dolly and not be a doll. And she wants her purpose is to comfort. And I put a brick wall here because um, she's one of the gatekeepers. She's a gatekeeper. There we go. So this is Anne. I'm going to jot that down here real quick. Um, Bring my journal back up. Anne was really going to town beating up the commanders from that military that raped me. When I came back in, I wanted a cigarette, so I had one. Then I came and sat on the toilet and had some diarrhea. Sorry, I know, too much information, but it's just what happens. Sarge was screaming, "She doesn't want me smoking," and it's because she didn't want me to remember. Trish is the first wall. Sarge is the third. Siggy is the second. So I'm discovering my firewalls here, my guards, my gatekeepers. Each wall's off one depth from the next. The first one is Trish, the second one is Siggy, and the third one is Sarge. It occurred to me that that's why I transferred to El Paso, because those commanders knew where my dad was stationed. Yes, my dad was stationed in the exact same place I was, except I think 30 years earlier. And they knew what he did. I was sitting on the toilet smoking, having diarrhea, and I felt like I was being electrocuted. From the top of my head to my toes, I was shaking. I remembered that in El Paso, I used to have guard duty in the middle of the night. After an hour or so, they would come and bring someone to replace me and tell me that I had a different location to guard. Now, guard duty is usually 2 hour stints, and I realize now reading this, it wasn't an hour or so afterwards. It was more like 10 or 15 minutes after I got there. So I'm gonna put that in there. I've learned that since then. They took me to an underground area into some torture room. That's where Armstrong came into play. The first thing they do when they interrogate is strong arm you. So Armstrong was the first defense against that. I should say part. They were not to know that I had CIA programming. They broke through Armstrong and got to Gumby on what he was supposed to know, but no more. The next layer is deep throat. It's a deep programming so that I do not talk. The throat, deep throat. Now, at this time, I thought that the programming, MKU programming I had gotten as a child, was not connected with the military. Why I thought that, I since then have learned that now. But what they did was they went in and accessed my earlier MK Ultra programming that I got from my father, and also at training camp, and what's there? two times when I was a kid, yeah, and then reinforced it, but I didn't understand that at the time of reading this. The interrogator was telling me that this is what my father did when he was here, the job that that man was doing right now. I did not talk. Deep Throat did his job and concealed the CIA training. Now, this was a goose chase of a memory. Because later on I realized, no, they were accessing all of it. They knew the CIA, all that stuff. That was done to me once. I remember I would go back to my room at 3 or 4 in the morning and just sit on my bed shaking and have a cigarette. I would wake up and remember nothing. Sarge does not want me smoking because she is the wall between talking and not talking. They were trying to convince me to not get out of the army and to continue on in the army. I had passed the Soldier of the Month and I would be able to go higher, and they would train me for a special job. I said I was not interested. I got out of the army and went back to Milwaukee and had that experience with the Balistreri boy, the mobster family. After that, I went to Texas to get away from everything. I was able to relax a little bit, and where I remembered Dad sexually abused me, but no more. Sarge's key words are, we've got to keep the trains moving. I could. I went about my life safely in Dallas for about 10 years, and again, at this point in time, I didn't know it, but I wasn't safe in Dallas either. At least I think that's the case. Then I went back to Milwaukee for 2 years, and back to Texas, and then into Scientology. Then Scientology led me to Chris, and then Chris led me to Alan Watt for 17 years, and now Jon, who's my counselor. I also remembered that Balistreri woman and my first sergeant, Top, would flex their hands in front of their chest. They would say, "Don't mind me, I have a bout of arthritis." And I would respond, "I'm sorry to hear that. I wish I could do something for that." That was how they knew I had been cult trained. Now, time passes. After the first interrogation in the underground military area, and I did not talk at the deepest level, but I did, they decided to use me for sex play. The next trips down there were for satanic sexual rituals. Kitten and Sailor handled all of that. Now, I have to say, I did not recall that part of this, so I don't know that it would be Kitten and Sailor handling it, or if they did handle it and split. So I'm going to write this down. Kitten, Sailor, El Paso. This is what I do when I reread my journals, because at the time I'm writing them, it's months and months and months ago, but I'm at a different level of understanding in space now. So you can write this down and dig into it and see if there's something more. But I have been digging into the El Paso stuff, and right now what I'm thinking, I'm not certain, but I think that this was a wild goose chase as well, because the memories I have now of the time in the El Paso with the torture didn't have any sex involved in it at all, had MK Ultra programming. So I believe this is a wild goose chase right here, but I don't want to ignore it either. So that's why I wrote it down. The boy that I dated in El Paso, Edward, that's funny because just this weekend I remembered he was a handler, but at the time of writing this, I thought he was the bee's knees. That boy I dated in El Paso, Edward, was the first boyfriend I had that treated me well. We had a lot of fun riding around on his dirt bike in the mountains. I remembered feeling odd and uncomfortable at how nice he was. I also enjoyed being respected. When it was time for me to leave the army, I was relieved. That's when I drove back to Milwaukee and I stopped at the river and baptized myself. I talked about that in a previous journal entry, but that's funny. Something I've discovered that because I'm reading my journal entries for you guys, literally, what is this? 6 months after the fact. And I've had 6 months of therapy and 6 months of TED work and all that. And I've had so many more realizations that when I kind of lost my train of thought there. But when I come back and reread these, I realize the goose chases and the lies that other parts are telling me. Now, after this, I remembered a part called uh, Jacobin, and his new name is Yuri. And Yuri's purpose, and it was a deep MK Ultra program to sabotage me and lead me down wild goose chases. And I'm thinking that this is him right here because I don't, yeah. Anyway, um, yeah. And then stopping by, I stopped at the river and baptized myself because I remember driving home and not just having this need to be baptized. I couldn't remember the abuses. I couldn't remember the programming. Just remembered my front personality, Danica, who was Edward's boyfriend or girlfriend, and we'd go out in the desert, dirt biking, and I just thought he was wonderful, but I couldn't let myself get close enough to him to join him in his life afterwards. But I realized now that there had to have been a deep, deep part inside of me that knew he was a handler and was backing off and only allowed myself to get so close. And yes, it's true with trauma survivors, it's hard for us to get close regardless. But I think that's what the baptism was about was, all that satanic crap in Germany. And then I go to El Paso and they MK Ultra me and do all that stuff. And I've come to discover just this past week, there's even more, that when I was driving home, that's why I wanted to get baptized. Some part inside of me, maybe it was spirit, needed to cleanse that stuff, needed to reconnect with God for just a minute. And I just had that thought go through my mind again, and I lost my train of thought. Anyhow, it'll come when it comes. So let me get back to the journal. Yeah. Um, so time passes. When we were kids, Dad used to, oh, yeah, this is a totally different subject here. So my memories are jumping back and forth. When we were kids, Dad used to have us clean our room and he would come in and check it afterwards. He literally used a white glove along the top of the doors and such, just like the military does. If the glove came out dirty, we had to do it again. He also made us make our beds like the military did. That's why when I was in basic training, I was made to teach all the others how to properly make their bed because mine was perfect to the point where you could bounce a quarter off of it, just like Dad used to do. Mom used to argue with him that that was ridiculous, but he would not stop doing it. He said, they have to learn to be thorough. It came in handy. Well, and he said they have to learn to be thorough. It came in handy in my restaurant jobs when we had to clean the kitchen. Plus, I keep my house very clean. Except for the past 2 weeks, I've only just cleaned the kitchen. Dad, my part dad, well, actually, it's the part called Clean. Now, I've realized it's part called Clean, who changed her name to, oh, I'm sorry, Clean, I forgot your name. Let's see. Oh, geez, there's way too many there. Anyway, sorry. Dad, now, so this is the part Clean, but it came from my father programming me to clean well. And Dad, my part dad, who's now called David, is the anal retentive and detail-oriented part, the perfectionist. So time passes, that's what that little thing means. So I sat down to put the red light on my face for about 30 minutes for this skin condition I have. I was sitting there thinking, if I have an IQ of 136, then when I tested to get into the Army, why did I only qualify to be a cook or parachute rigger? Certainly, I should have qualified for a more technical job or even for the officer training. It occurred to me that Tattletale knew the trajectory of my life and told Smarty Pants, who's my IQ. Smarty Pants went and checked with gut, which is my gut instinct, and clair, my clairvoyance, and spirit, my connection with God, and they confirmed. So they all conspired to have Smarty Pants work in such a way that I could pass it, but not too well. She dumbed herself down for that test. She outwitted the test. And right now I'm realizing that that's not the trajectory of my life going into the military was orchestrated, constructed and orchestrated by my CIA handler. But when I was in Iowa away from my father, he had created these events in the town and, you know, anyway, it funneled me into the Army, which is exactly where he wanted me. But again, at this point in time, I've got a part in my head, probably Yuri, sabotaging me, sending me down a wild goose chase again. So I'm just going to put goose chase here. I'll do this. So I'm thinking, oh, my parts got all together and conspired and outwitted those people. No, it was a program part is sending me down a wild goose chase. They also told me that when I was in high school, that I allowed Frog Legs, who was my promiscuous part, Anne and Andy to have free reign for a while so that I could get in just enough trouble to not graduate. Again, this is a wild goose chase because I've come to discover this is not right and have a record. So what happened here was I was with my girlfriends and we got in a car with a bunch of her friends that were older. I didn't know them. They were in the car drinking. I was not. The police pulled us over, which I'm sure it was a setup now, took us to the police station, and I got a little black mark on my record for being in a vehicle with people who were drunk driving. And that's what disqualified me from joining the Air Force where I wanted to go. And this girlfriend I've come to discover was a handler, and she put me in that car on purpose for this to happen. So, as I say, my life was directed in a certain way. That caused me to have to take that one summer school course through mail correspondence. I remember the professor asking me why I was doing this. I certainly was smart enough to get through class in school. I told him the reason, and he didn't really say anything. But they conspired to keep me out of college and also out of the Air Force. Frog Legs also got into trouble and wound up with a little bit of record, and that's what I was just telling you about. That's why the Air Force did not take us, which is what forced me to consider the Army. They knew that Sarge, my part trained at 7 years old, would reach for the military because she was trained to. Air Force or university. So no university because I couldn't afford it, and no Air Force. So when I got into the Army, I would dumb myself down enough to get a low grade job to stay under the radar. No higher level training. And oh, this is what I was going to say. It's funny. Okay, because I'm reading the journal entry from 6 months ago, but my parts know that I have a schedule and I've written down what my next journal reading is going to be. And they remember what I wrote back at this point in time. So it's almost like the parts, because they know I'm about to read a journal, at least this is what I think. The week or two before I read the journal to you guys here and now, they have given me more realizations and I get specific memories regarding the parts that I'm about to read to you guys. So that as I'm and I don't know if this is why they do it, but it's just the coincidence or the synchronicity, or maybe God arranges it this way. So that as I'm reading my journal to you from 6 months ago, I've had the past week or two to digest these same parts and have a different understanding of it. So this is interesting because what was it, last week or the week before? I finally addressed this Sarge part, which I thought was just one part. Come to discover, no, it's not. Let me see. I got my worksheet here. Um, Anyway, the creation of Sarge was literally like 10 or 15 parts. Let me see. Hmm, there, it's not here, dang it. Anyway, that's okay. Actually, I'll pull that up. Maybe this will wind up being 3 journal sessions instead of 2. I'll just pull up my quick timeline. It's easier to find parts this way. Okay, so Sarge is 7. Okay. Where are you? They were brain. Okay, so I had MK Ultra at 6. They send me to training camp. I got all this stuff going on. Marge, that's right. Sarge changed her name to Marge. Okay, see this whole orange area here? I'll make it bigger. These were all of the parts. It was they put me in the kitchen to oversee something. And some guard took the trash out. Well, apparently the guards aren't supposed to do that. And so they singled this guard out and literally, let me show you here. These were the parts that um I just did these last week. That the parts revealed the whole incident. Come on now. There we go, Carol. Was uh oh, that's a different thing. Okay, Carol. This guard's taking the trash out, but apparently only kitchen's supposed to do that because I was supposed to be overseeing everything. Uh, I was in trouble and he was in trouble, but I realized now it was a setup to get my Sarge programming instilled. So they took this guy to the chapel, be yelled at while the guard is taken away. And I was taken with him because I was responsible for him. See the sisters, because this is at the School Sisters of Notre Dame. I'm 7 years old. Bring out a hammer and nails to crucify the guard on the cross. So they had this huge cross, and large enough, obviously, for a human body, and laid it down, put him on it. Here's the next part. See the sisters bring out him. Oh, okay, come on now. Let's move on. There's Chip. This is the next part. He had to watch the nails be put in the guard's hands and feet on the cross. And I'm sorry this is such a graphic picture, but I couldn't find, anything else. Then to have to look at the guard being crucified and the cross raised off the ground. I remember I didn't want to look at it. And I got in trouble for covering my eyes. And as y'all know, this is the new part with their new name and their new picture. Then, as he was crucified, watch as many perps cut and peel the skin off the guard as he is alive. Have rifle shoved in my back as I step back. So I'm starting to step back and away involuntarily. And I have the tip of this gun in my hip. And you'll hear me talk about the 6 months later with my counselor. We just did this last session. Vomit rises up my throat, and I know I can't vomit, so I'm swallowed it back down. So her name was sour mouth from swallowing my vomit, and you had to try to not let them see and swallowing it. It's another part. Um, and then I felt myself wanting to cry. her name is Swallow, and remember, I'll swallow it, swallow it, swallow it, don't cry, swallow it, push down and away my tears and horror. And I realized that I was having body memories, remembering this part, and her glands and her my glands and my neck. I just had this whole body reaction to swallowing all this. So that's what that is. Then the sister, and I know that this is the front of the neck, but she grabbed the back of my neck and was just squeezing. Hazel DeRosic was one of the sisters. She was my mentor, the person in charge of me. Squeezes my neck to force me to look at the torture, tells me it's my fault and responsibility. She's saying, look what you did. Because you didn't have control of him, this is what happens. So it was to instill the Sarge part, to do what you're supposed to do, be perfect, never make a mistake, because if you do, someone else gets hurt and you're going to watch them. Anyway, then demonic influence started coming in the room. My body was flushing from hot to cold. I think a demon may or may not have moved in or through me or something. My body is hot and cold fluctuations. And now, instead of just the back of my neck being squeezed, she grabbed my throat right here, which was why my gland, I had body memories of gland. I began pulling at the hands around my throat and started screaming because instead of demons flying around, this man's being flayed alive while crucified on a cross. I'm having hot flushes, and I just was losing it, screaming, trying to pull these hands off, and I got this rifle in my back, so I can't move. Anyway, the next part was I thought I was going insane. I began pulling hands around my throat and started screaming. Come on now. The next part was I just got to the point where I just went numb and I froze. I think my mind just shut down. I froze. I became frozen and numb, can't think or move. I'm just there watching all of this. Then my mentor is saying that, all these different things, but she say you're going to take it all to the grave, take it to the grave, take it to the grave. You'll never talk about this, whatever. That part's name is Tombstone. And then after it was all done, it's winding down, about to get out of there. And she said, so this part that was Chris, so they knew what they were doing every step of the way, every 5 minutes or so, or however long this went on, an hour or two. It says, keep all parts and missions operational and successful, no mistakes ever. And she said to me, you're my sergeant now. And that's how Sarge got her name. But when I was writing this journal, I didn't know any of it. None of it. All I knew is there was a Sarge part. They knew that Sarge would reach for the military because she was trained to. So no university. So when I got into the Army, I would dumb myself down. They also suppressed teacher's pet during high school because they didn't want her doing so well that we could get a scholarship to college or university. Tattletale couldn't tell anybody in the real world, but she could certainly let all of the different parts know what was going on. It was their intention to have me get into university and recruit me into the CIA or the Air Force for dirty jobs there or somewhere. Now, again, this is part of the goose chase because I've learned no, they funneled me exactly where they wanted me. And at this point in time, I was thinking, oh, my parts outsmarted them. No, they didn't. It wasn't until Scientology that I actually had my IQ tested that I became consciously aware of it. It was after that when I met Chris, who also has a high IQ, I should say has, that I felt I had an equal by my side. I believe that also opened me up to be able to digest Alan's information. Learning the truth about the world's corruption, knowing I had a warrior right next to me, allowed me enough psychological safety to be able to finally remember, although it took 20 years to get here. I also remembered very early on that Chris and I had experienced that Chris had an experience he told me about. Oh, yeah. He was driving home from work and he got to the last traffic light before home. Police cars got in front of him and behind him and on each side, and they all stopped. They had him trapped there for about 5 minutes. He said he didn't know what to do. No one got out, no one moved. Then finally, they all moved on. He told me it was, he told me he was sure it was something to do with his being a ranger and them keeping tabs on him. Apparently, keeping tabs on him has happened throughout his whole life. When he told me that, I knew in that instant it was a warning to me through him not to do what I was doing. I thought it had to do with Alan's work, and it probably did. There was also a time there was a mark etched into the grass in our front yard. It was the letter C, and it was facing south. Now, this letter was probably a good 2 to 3 feet tall, 2 feet wide. It occurred to me that this was a marking for satellite to be able to see, pointing directly to what, this satellite would be. That there were A-level threats, B-level threats, and C-level threats all the way down. Apparently, I was a C-level threat due to my work with Alan. I ultimately converted that grass into gravel, but I would imagine it's still there. I could never grow grass or anything there at all, ever, for about 5 years. Now it is covered with gravel. The thing that I had been chasing for and trying to understand, God and the world, my whole life, came together with Chris and Alan and Jon. That part of me that has spiritual awareness of Jesus and God is called Spirit. She is the one that always pushed me to look for answers. Spirit was born when Jesus entered my body when I was very little and he scared off the witches. Again, that's another goose chase because I know that Spirit was born when I was 3 weeks old, fighting for my life, and the Spirit of God entered me and I survived. Spirit always tried to stay very small and quiet until I became safe, but Spirit knew what they had planned for me and got all of the rest of the parts to work together to keep me out of the Air Force and keep me out of university. Keep me in the background of wherever I was and whatever I was doing so that I would not be noticed. I was always very comfortable being in the background. Now I realize I have to come forward. Now, again, there's a little bit of goose chase in here from Yuri, my part. That's MK Ultra part that sends me on goose chases so I don't remember. Because Spirit was born at 3 weeks old, not at 4 years old. And I didn't thwart their plans and go into the army. I went exactly where they wanted me to go. So, and also part of my programming was to, during that Sarge incident, which I just remembered a week ago, was they said, you will not stand out. You will have mediocre jobs. You will stay in the background. You will this, you will that, you will whatever. Because the things they needed me to do, they didn't need, they needed me to be a nothing, a nobody. And Nathan Reynolds talked about that. He got the same programming so that he could be an assassin and do all his Delta stuff. But in his front personality life, he was just mediocre and nothing special. I got the same programming. So again, I was trying to understand things, but I had a part sending me on wild goose chases. But I kept at it and kept at it, and as the parts revealed, I got the correct story down the road. So my goodness, I've read one page and it's been an hour, and I have 2, 4, 6, 8 pages. Wow. So I guess I'll do as many journal entries as necessary before I post the session that goes right after that. Um, so I guess it takes as long as it takes. I'm gonna have to change my episode numbers and stuff like that because I don't want, for you to see the session and not know what was, talked about or whatever, it'd be confusing. So the journals have to come before that. And another thing that I'm going to do a video about, I don't know that I thought it was going to be today or tomorrow, but it might get pushed a week because of this. Was something I was discussing with John is I says, well, I have these parts in me. One called plant that takes care of my plants, one called cook that does the cooking, one that, cleans house, one that knows how to drive, one that this one. I said, but they didn't have any trauma. So are they actually a part? And he's like, only you can evaluate that. And so I'm like, yeah, they're parts. They interact with the others. And so I thought, well, I want to do a talk or have a conversation about parts that are conscious and how we switch all day long in and out of them. You know what I mean? So just a little teaser for what's up and coming. So thanks for listening. Thanks for coming on my journey. I pray God gives you exactly what you need when you need it. The right video, the right book, the right person, the right experience to keep your journey moving. I ask God to watch over and protect you, surround you with impenetrable shields of his love, with his holy angels standing guard, to bind all powers, principalities, spiritual wickedness in all places, on all planes of existence, to bind them from any and all interference with you, to block all astral projection, and to protect you, your spouses, your children, your pets, your homes, your property, your vehicles, and your travel, and to keep you safe. So, I love you all. Thanks for listening. Take care, and I'll see you next time.
Round and round, what comes